Hello, everyone, and welcome to Developing Palates. I am Aaron Loomis, and with me, as always, is Jiunn Liu. How you doing, Jiunn?
Good, man. Well, this is a video four in a row talking about the last one and getting through it.
Yeah. So tonight we are talking about the Foundation Tabernacle Toro, and this is close to a near true Toro, 6 inches by 52 ring gauge. This is out of the Tabacalera Fernandez factory in Nicaragua. Connecticut broadleaf, Mexican San Andreas binder. The filler is Honduras and Nicaraguan, blended by Nicholas Melillo. And price point on this is $11.50. And this was just released at the trade show this year, so July of 2016. So with that being said, let's get into our pre-light experience. So Jiunn, what was your pre-light experience like?
Yep. So pre-light experience in terms of the actual look of the cigar. I thought that the Tabernacle Toro has a dark and rustic Maduro wrapper. The wrapper shows some nice tooth that was spread evenly throughout the cigar, which is, a toothy wrapper is always a nice presentation thing. So a couple of minor veins are spread out. The wrapper appears, it was neatly applied with fairly tight seams. The bunching seemed kind of loose. Feeling the cigar kind of within, especially the first half of the cigar, it was pretty spongy give to it, like, almost like a wet sponge kind of a give to it. So more than what I typically get out of it. So, and the head is finished off with a nice thick double cap. Moving on to the pre-light aromas, wrapper gave a sharp cedar and some white pepper. Nosing the foot gave me really pungent abundance of white pepper, cedar, and dry nuts. Cold draw gave me dry cardboard, dry nuts, cedar, and like a lip numbing amount of white pepper. So a lot of white pepper on my lips.
Right. Yeah, the wrapper was a dark chocolate brown color. Had a bit of a dull finish to it, but the wrapper was, for me, it was smooth. I didn't have as much toothiness maybe as you. It just didn't feel like it was all that rough. There were a few veins visible. Seams were almost invisible. Appears to be a double cap, so it sounds like that's what you had, so we'll go with that. They were very well applied. The band colors of black, gold, and red, they work really well against that wrapper color. The rectangular section that has the portrait and the gold embossing over some of the sections of the portrait just kind of seemed out of place to me. I don't know. I'm not sure what you thought about it or if you even looked at it that closely, but it just seemed like it's just this huge, big rectangle on the band, and it just kind of didn't work. I mean, it doesn't take anything away from the cigar. It's just a band presentation piece. Aroma from wrapper was manure and earth. The foot gave a very sweet hay aroma. Pre-light draw brought that same sweet hay from the foot aroma, but I didn't note enough of that, any spiciness on my lips from that pre-light draw that you kind of experienced. Let's get into the flavors, most important part of the cigar. First third to final third, what was your flavor experience like?
Yep. So first third was my favorite part of the cigar. So from first draw, slick and mouth salivating kind of a profile. I thought like there was a lot going on with the cigar, and I realized when I lit the cigar up and I kept smoking it, and I drew on it so frequently that I started having a cherry after I first started smoking it. And at that point, I was like, all right, I got to back off. And the reason I did that is because I was like, man, what else am I tasting? I taste this, I taste that. So within the kind of the laundry list of flavors that I got medium full body flavors of gritty earth, cocoa, medium body sweet cream, dry biscuits, cedar, wood bitterness, an oily, slick white pepper spice, roasted dry nuts, and I got a little slight hint of stewed fruits as well. So roughly an inch in, the white pepper intensifies, and that gave it a fuller and more of an oily within the oily white pepper spice. And it was great because it absolutely caked my entire palate, my tongue, and then my just everything else. So I love that. On the retro, I got rich and oily white pepper, sweet cream, biscuits, and cedar. So absolutely delicious retro on this cigar. And this is a cigar which, if you don't retro, you're going to miss out a lot on the intensity of flavors and the fullness of flavors, in my opinion. So moving on, the finish, it lingered with deep and oily white pepper on the tongue, wood bitterness, and dried nuts. So in terms of strength and body, so body was medium full since the start, and then it went medium full all the way throughout the first third. Strength started off medium until the halfway mark of the first third, in which it became medium full, and then at that point it kind of gave me this, like a relaxing head buzz, I guess. So moving on to the second third, still a medium full in body and strength. The complexities and the nuances unfortunately kind of died down a bit, and I mainly got gritty earth, cocoa, wood bitterness, and slick and oily white pepper spice, medium body sweet cream. So noticeably the like that stewed fruit flavor was gone, which I miss because I just really dig that note in general. And then in intermittent fashion, the wood bitterness intensifies, and sometimes that wood bitterness really weighed heavy on my palate, and so much on the palate that sometimes it'll kill the other flavors. But it kind of went on and off, so it was still tolerable. Through to those, still that same rich and oily white pepper, sweet cream, biscuits, and cedar. So still very much so love the retro. Finish lingering with oily white pepper spice on the tongue, wood bitterness, and dried nuts. Last third, still medium full in terms of body and strength. And one of the main things that I got out of the last third was that intermittent intensified wood bitterness is more of a consistent note at that point. It worked with the profile because most of the profile was so earthy. So to that extent, it worked, but it kind of dominates here and there. So in addition to that wood bitterness, still that oily white pepper, gritty earth, cocoa. That sweet cream is no longer like a medium body sweet cream, but it's more of a faint sweet cream. And then still got the dry roasted nuts. On the retro, exactly the same within the first and second third. Loving that rich and oily white pepper, biscuits, sharp cedar, and then the sweet cream. The finish, it lingered with deep and oily white pepper on the tongue, wood bitterness, and sharp cedar. But unfortunately, within the finish on the last third, what I missed out on is that biscuited is kind of that bready note that I had within the first couple of thirds. But overall, I mean, it kind of what I expected in line with what a broadleaf, Connecticut broadleaf does. Something that's, gritty, earthy, chocolatey, sort of a thing going on.
Yeah, upon lighting, I was greeted with some woodiness and some coffee. After a few draws, some creaminess and a mellow black pepper kind of joined that wood and coffee profile. And then shortly after a quarter inch, the coffee and the pepper went away and that wood and creaminess remained. The wood and cream, that was also what was present on the retrohale. And then at the half-inch mark, the wood and cream remained, but then there was hints of coffee that were kind of popping in and out. And then just past the inch mark, the wood became more defined as cedar. There was still some creaminess and a hint of coffee at that point as well. And then inch and a half in, the cedar transitioned to oak, and the cream faded away, and the coffee became much fuller to make the profile a little darker. The retrohale consisted of oak and a lighter version of that coffee. And then near the end of the third, the coffee became a bit more earthy and mixed well with the oak. And the strength at this point was just kind of at medium. And then getting into the second third, it continued with the oak and the earthiness from the previous third. And then half an inch in, the oak and the earthiness were really mixing well together. There was also a little bit of bitterness that joined in, but it was enhancing the profile. So it was a good bitterness. The retrohale was like a toasted oak with a little bit of earthiness on the finish. At the 1 inch mark, a light chocolate came in, and that mixed with the oak and the earthiness. And then an inch and a half in, the chocolate went away, and a bit of walnut appeared and mixed in with the oak and the earthiness. And when I say walnut, I'm not talking about the wood walnut. I'm talking about the actual nut. So you kind of get a little bit of a bitterness from the nut. And that's also not a flavor that I get that often. So it was interesting to see that kind of pop in. Near the end of the third, the walnut went away. Oak became a little charred, and the earthiness had also gone away. There was a slight sweetness on the beginning of each draw, which was kind of a unique profile. And the retrohale was also a slightly sweet oak. And then the strength had kind of just bumped up a little bit to just above medium. Final third, the slightly charred oak continued as the sole flavor. A quarter inch in, some of the bitterness joined in with the charred oak. And then at a half inch in, the bitterness really ramped up and it kind of pushed the charred oak to the background. I did a purge at that point and the bitterness settled down a little bit. And so the oak came back to the front of the profile. And then an inch to a quarter in, the oak gained a toasty component to it. And then as the cigar came to a close, that toasty oak remained, and it was like that slight bitterness was in the background, and the strength had ramped up then to medium full at that point. So kind of a slight increase of strength as the cigar went along. So getting into performance, burn and draw, what was your experience like?
So burn was really good, very good. I had really thick and voluminous smoke production. I like most cigars, I smoked this in my single car garage, and that smoke is so thick and it just lingers. So that was unique. It almost reminded me of like back in the days when I do hookah with friends.
Right.
Hookah smoke is like really thick, and it's kind of like that. And then also within smoking time, I got almost 3 hours out of smoking this thing.
Right.
And when I clocked myself, I had to do the math a couple times. Be like, seriously, I did almost 3 hours worth, which is incredible. It's almost like I was smoking a freaking A-size cigar. In terms of the actual ash, snow white ash, really pretty snow white ash. It helped fairly strong with the 1.5 inch increments. Burn line fairly razor sharp. Within the entire smoking time, I didn't have to do any retouch ups or use my lighter at all, which is the most important part. On the draw, I thought the draw was a bit loose, but it was still good. It still let me taste all the different flavors, but it was noticeably loose, and that's just cutting off probably like 3/4 or 1/4 of the cap.
Right.
So luckily, the cigar didn't build any, tar or just unpleasant stuff on the cap that allowed me to do more cuttings. But yeah, overall, another good constructed cigar out of AJ's factory.
Yeah. For me, there was some slight waves in the burn line, but for the most part, it stayed very straight. And I got the same kind of experience with you. Ash was holding on in kind of 1.5 inch in segments there. For the draw, it was pretty tight for the first half inch, but after that, it became very good. It was just slightly tighter than I prefer the rest of the way, but nothing that affected the smoking experience. So there was just kind of that quick half inch at the beginning, and then after that, it was kind of really close to what I prefer in regards to the draw. Overall performance, what was your experience like?
So Foundation and Nick coming out with first Way One Say, which is delicious, and then doing the Charter Oak Connecticut that we just recently reviewed, also delicious. And then this is what everyone's of course waiting for, right? Is his return to Connecticut broadleaf. And it's a good cigar. I mean, it's at the trade show, I heard some folks say that this is supposedly what the original Liga 9s tasted like.
Right.
I don't really know what that means because I don't really recall smoking Liga 9s back in the days. And I do no, I take that back. I do remember smoking it back in the days, but I was too new to cigars, and I was like, why the fuck did I just pay $17 for a Liga 9? I don't even know what the fuck I'm tasting.
Right.
But anyways, I digress. So it's kind of what what I expect a Connecticut broadleaf to give me.
Mhm.
You know, a smoke that's chewy, dirty, like a medium full body kind of a cigar. I did find the strength to be very surprising in this example.
Mhm.
You know, through most of the cigar, it was medium full for me, and I just typically don't get that in a Connecticut broadleaf. And I'm not sure if I like that. You know, when I'm smoking something that's for me, I often associate if I were to smoke a spicy cigar, I in a way I kind of want the strength to coincide with it.
Mhm.
Whereas in this cigar, it was not. It was just chewy, gritty, earthy broadleaf. So I'm not sure how I feel about that strength. And then within the wood bitterness, with it within especially parts of the second third or last third being overwhelmingly bitter. Um, I dislike that. I appreciate wood bitterness and bitterness in a cigar, and it enhances the profile. But if it overwhelms it, it really kills it for me.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, a little bit more aging will help with this. So, but I think about all the Connecticut broadleafs that get released this year. The most popular one is certainly this Tabernacle. And then, of course, Steve Saka's Mi Carita and his line extensions of the Silver Mesa. Crown Heads, the La Carême.
Yeah.
And, of course, the originator, in my opinion, of Connecticut broadleaf is Pete Johnson, right, with the Specialist TAA offering.
Mhm.
There's a lot to come out, and it's a great consumer's market to find that Connecticut broadleaf that works for you. So, benchmarking against the other ones that we've smoked so far, which is, of course, this Mi Carita, Silver Mesa. This is different. This isn't the strength and the bitterness makes it kind of a curveball for me.
Mhm.
But it's still good, and different is good because within all the broadleafs out there, you don't want to make it so homogeneous, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't, anyways, as a producer. And I think perhaps Nick was going for that, using, for instance, that Mexican San Andreas binder and some Honduran tobacco in there that I typically don't see in a Connecticut broadleaf.
Right. Right.
So, all in all, good cigar. Worth trying out, of course.
Yep. So the
Right.
cigar started off very mellow for me, and I think that kind of coincided with that tight draw for that first half inch. Because after that first half inch, the flavors became much fuller, as that draw eased up. The flavors that were present were very good, and there was some really nice transitions in the cigar. The profile didn't really become dark like some of the other broadleaf cigars can exhibit. So that might lead to like a larger array of smokers that this would be approachable to. Strength also didn't get too full. I mean, final third, I got up into that medium full range. So that might also appeal to some more smokers. Definitely, this is a cigar I could see myself going back to. I definitely, recommend people picking one up to see if it's going to fit their profile. But definitely, I'd say more of an afternoon or an evening smoke. And I think that's probably typically what people would say, broadleaf would be for, unless you're like a really a dark and high strength kind of smoker, and then you guys, those guys can smoke them for breakfast or whatever they want. But more of a afternoon or later in the day kind of smoke. But definitely a good cigar. So getting into the scores, I think this might be the closest that we've ever been in regards to scoring. So pretty much in line. So you gave this cigar a 7.13, and I gave it a 7.00. So how do you think that score kind of matched up with your experience?
No, that's a very good score. First of all, and within my experience of just the flavors, that makes sense. And man, so that first serve, I rated it very good.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it, and then I was thinking, oh shit, like the second third, which is typically the best and the most favorite part for me with non-Cuban cigars, is going to be anything like this first third. This cigar's going to knock it out of the park for me.
Right.
But it did lose complexity and nuances, in my opinion, but still good.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in revisiting this down the road. I mean, I think aging this and letting it kind of meld a little bit more together is going to be truly a better representation of what I think perhaps what Nick is going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my score fits perfectly. I mean, seven's a really good score. Like you said, I think revisiting this later on down the road might even prove to be better, but definitely good. You know, I mean, I'm not a person that's like really like always jonesing for broadleaf, but I do enjoy a good one. So this is one of the most, I think one of, like you said, along with the Mikurita from Steve Saka, those two were probably the two most anticipated cigars kind of going into the trade show. So I think definitely lives up to the hype. I know a lot of people were talking about it at the show. It's gotten some good scores already. So I think it's doing well. Kind of talking about like how close our scores were. I mean, the only two categories where we scored it differently was you scored it one rating higher on that final third than I did, and I scored it one rating higher than you did on the draw. Otherwise, we were dead on in regards to the ratings. So it was like, and the flavor is more heavily weighted than the draw. So that's kind of where. We were each higher in one of the categories, but the flavor you were higher on, so that's why you got that 0.13 bump on it. But otherwise, we were right in line with how the cigar scored. So I thought that was interesting that one of the ones that we really really agreed upon in regards to the final score. So
yeah, no, that's super rare.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on the cigar?
Well, here's a question that I want you to answer. I'll answer it too. So, in the case of the popular Connecticut broadleaf, who's king, Saka or Nick?
Out of the two that I've smoked for reviews, I rated this Tabernacle higher than the Mikurita. But the Mikurita I smoked had a fairly tight draw, and I think it maybe knocked out a few of the nuances. The one I smoked at the trade show I thought was better. So I don't know. I mean, I think they're right on par with each other. So I don't know that I can really say for sure if one is better than the other. And I mean, they're different blends, so it's not like it's not like they had the exact same tobacco and they were just doing their own blend and trying to do a comparison. So, but I know that they both have heritage from coming out of Drew Estate, so everybody wants to kind of throw them two together. So it's going to be a popular comparison, even though I know that they're not really shooting to kind of go head to head. They know that they'll both pull market share and stuff like that. So they have to know that the comparison is going to be there, and they kind of have to just live with it. But they may like it or not like it. So. But I think they're right on par with each other. For me, there's not one that's like head and shoulders above the other.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you mean. At first, I was like, "Oh, you're going to give that diplomatic answer," but no, you're right. I agree with you in the sense of, they are different cigars.
Yeah.
Yes, they're wrapped around Connecticut broadleaf, and it's kind of like back to the Drew Estate Liga 9 roots in a way.
Right.
But they are very different cigars, and it's a great thing that they are different cigars.
Yep. Exactly.
But yeah.
So if you're just catching this video on YouTube, be sure to check out the full written review on the website, developingpalates.com. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll get notified of all the video recaps that we do in all of our other videos. Be sure to follow us on all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google+. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you all in the next video.